It was late autumn in Washington state, and the nights had grown longer and colder. That evening, the air was damp and heavy with the smell of rain. I remember the cold drizzle soaking my jacket as I hurried toward the entrance of the Blackwood Archive, a private repository located just outside of Olympia. This wasn't your typical library. The Blackwood Archive wasn't open to the public. Its halls held collections of rare books and documents that only researchers and staff could access. For reasons I never quite understood, the archive's hours extended until 10 p.m., something about accommodating late-working academics. That's what they told me when I took the job as a night custodian. The pay was decent, and the hours worked with my schedule, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel uneasy walking through those doors every evening. The building was old, with towering oak shelves, narrow corridors, and walls that seemed to hold whispers of their own. Even on my first day, I noticed something off. But that night would haunt me for the rest of my life. I arrived at the archive just before 9 p.m., greeted only by the familiar musty scent of old paper and damp wood. The receptionist, Mrs. Albright, was finishing her shift as I walked in. She was an older woman, with tired eyes that seemed to see too much. She handed me the key ring and gave me her usual parting words. Lock the reading rooms last. And don't linger in room 7. She never explained why, but her tone always left me unsettled. I brushed it off and began my rounds. The archive was quiet as usual, the kind of quiet that wasn't peaceful, but oppressive. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly, their flicker casting distorted shadows that danced along the walls. I told myself I'd get through the night quickly. Check each room, lock the doors, and leave by 10. Easy enough. Or so I thought. By the time I reached room 7, I already felt uneasy. The air was colder here, the kind of cold that clung to your skin and made you shiver even with layers on. The door was ajar. It hadn't been when I passed it earlier. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the handle. Inside, the room was empty, except for a single table with a book lying open. Its pages fluttered gently, though the air was still. The title on the cover read, Echoes of the Forgotten. As I approached, the words on the pages seemed to blur and shift, almost like they were alive. I blinked, trying to focus, but the letters danced in and out of view. And then, the door slammed shut behind me. I spun around, my heart hammering in my chest. The room was empty, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. My flashlight trembled in my hand as I scanned the corners of the room. That's when I heard it. A whisper. Faint at first, but growing louder, clearer.
You shouldn't be here.
The words were slow and deliberate, spoken in a voice that was neither male nor female. My blood turned to ice as the whispering grew, overlapping itself until it became a deafening cacophony. I stumbled backward, knocking over a chair in my panic. The sound of the whisper stopped abruptly, leaving the room in suffocating silence. I tried to regain my composure and continue my rounds, but my hands were shaking too badly to hold the key steady. As I made my way back to the lobby, I noticed a faint light coming from the basement door. The basement was off limits. I'd never been down there, and frankly, I didn't want to. But something compelled me to approach. The light flickered faintly, casting strange shadows on the staircase leading down. I opened the door cautiously. The hum grew louder, accompanied by a faint static, like an old radio struggling to find a signal. Each step creaked under my weight as I descended into the darkness. At the bottom of the stairs, I found a single wooden chair facing a blank wall. On the wall, scratched in jagged letters, were the words, "You are not alone." I bolted back up the stairs, slamming the basement door shut behind me. My heart was pounding, my vision blurred with fear. As I reached the main hallway, the lights flickered violently, casting the shadows into chaos. At the far end of the corridor, I saw it, a figure standing perfectly still. It was tall, unnaturally tall, its face obscured by darkness. But I could feel its gaze, cold and unrelenting, piercing through me. My legs refused to move as it took a single step forward. I don't know how, but I forced myself to run. My footsteps echoed through the empty halls, growing louder and louder until I burst through the front doors and into the freezing night air. I don't remember driving home. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely hold the wheel. For the next 3 nights, I didn't sleep. The shadows in my apartment seemed to move when I wasn't looking. Every creak of the floorboards made my heart race. I called my best friend, begging them to stay with me. When I finally worked up the courage to tell Mrs. Albright I wasn't coming back, her response chilled me to my core. No one ever does. I never stepped foot in the Blackwood archive again. But sometimes, late at night, I hear it, a faint whisper, calling my name. And I wonder if I ever truly left.